sea, sail home, sweet home, where the ships must go to get all cleaned up and put away.
All right.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Today we have a special guest, Miss Lisa, and it's Vin, correct?
Meeting.
That's right. Welcome you both. Thanks for joining. And Dakota, like always, thanks for being here, everybody. Today we have a special live. So we are live right now. So if you can tune in and drop a comment, a question, we're going to do our best to try and go back and forth with some of the information we want to share in regards to Medi-Cal today and the upcoming changes. So much like last week, we're going to be talking about some really big changes and that could be down the pike as well as stuff that we kind of know are happening. And so if you have a question or a concern, or you want to share a little bit about what's going on in your life, you are welcome to do so. As you probably know at this point, if you tune in every single week, we talk about all things IHSS, Protect Supervision, special education, Medi-Cal. And so today is going to be a really great live because, excuse me, we have Lisa herself, who has joined in the past, I think once or twice before here on live. It's been quite a bit of time, Lisa, but we're so glad that you're here. Do you want to maybe quickly introduce yourself and let everybody know kind of who you are and maybe why you're joining us today?
Yes, thank you, Caleb. Vinny and I decided to come on board and join you guys today because there was so much chatter going on about Medi-Cal, the proposed changes. And I know last week's live, it kind of left people wondering, what does that mean? And so just thought we'd come on the show and kind of try to help clarify some things. I've been dealing and helping people with Medi-Cal for over 30 years. I started a business back in 2003, over 20 years ago, called Medi-Cal Consulting Services, where we do just that. We consult with people about Medi-Cal eligibility. I used to work for Medi-Cal. I worked in 2 counties as a Medi-Cal eligibility worker. And I've worked in the nursing home industry as a corporate consultant, helping people navigate through those type of care journeys, going in and out of hospitals, rehab, and trying to get back home and get the care they need and deserve. And so I've got many years experience that I bring to the table and helped thousands and thousands of people in navigating these kind of things. So I'm very happy to be here today. Caleb, Dakota, you guys did a great job. Continue to do a great job. And it's so great to be able to be part of your team today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Before we jump into our main topic, there is one little housekeeping thing, Galt advocacy related thing that Teresa wants me to bring up. And it's about our upcoming seminar. It is, I think, just this next weekend that we're going to be having the resource fair on Saturday, this coming Saturday, and the seminar the Sunday right after that. That's the 7th and the 8th of June. And she especially wanted me to mention it because Facebook keeps rejecting all of our ads. 10 times now, Facebook has automatically rejected our ads with their AI algorithm saying that we're selling things, and it's really annoying. So we're doing what we can to get the information out there because it's completely free. We're not selling anything, but so we just want to let people know we're going to be there in San Bernardino. So now that we have that out of the way, now I'll hand it back over to Lisa to tell us all about Medi-Cal.
Well, not sure where to start. First of all, that there's over 15 million people that are currently enrolled in Medi-Cal right now. That's a third of the population here in the state of California. So that's a lot. So this is affecting a lot of people. So if you start feeling like you're being picked on, no, a lot of people are being picked on. So we need to come together as a group and join together and work together through this. And advocacy, I've actually done lobbying myself. I personally have gone to Sacramento, spoke to a Senate committee, and was successful in changing a bill. Wow. So I would say
that's awesome.
It was very life-changing. And it was my first experience. And we got them to change the bill before they put it into action. And we were very pleased with that. So you've got to understand that these things that are being proposed are not set in stone. and most likely are going to be changed before they actually become law. So it's really hard for Dakota, Caleb, myself, Vinny here to really tell you what to expect, because really nobody does. Nobody. Okay. So the things that we're going to be talking about today were the things that were in the last May revision. Now, the next vote that's going to be done on the bill is June 15th. And so when we get closer to that date, of course, things will have changed even more so. But what I'd like to do is kind of really talk about how things are and how they were prior that they're talking about going back to. One thing is that I think it's important to understand is there are 3 types of different Medi-Cal. Now, I'm sure a lot of us just know Medi-Cal as Medi-Cal, but in reality, there are 3 different types of Medi-Cal. And when you want to understand how this is going to affect you, you need to understand which Medi-Cal you're under, okay? Because each type of Medi-Cal has completely different rules. Now, those 3 different types, one is SSI Medi-Cal. SSI Medi-Cal is administered through the Social Security office. You have to go to Social Security to apply, and they're the ones that administer those. Those rules under SSI Medi-Cal never changed, and I don't think they're really proposing to change those at this point.
And do you mind if I ask a question on that, Lisa?
Absolutely.
So, to my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, and forgive me if you had said this just now in conjunction with that. So, SSI, if approved for SSI or even SSDI in a sense, there still is the expectation that Medi-Cal follows that once it is approved. Is that correct?
So I'm sorry, say that again, Caleb?
So if somebody is applying for SSI disability for themselves, Medi-Cal in turn is followed with that. Is that correct?
Okay, so yes. So when you apply for, let's say you contact Social Security and you say, I want to apply because I feel that I'm disabled. The Social Security office will determine whether your disability, if they determine you're disabled, they'll determine whether your disability benefits will fall under SSI or if your disability benefits will fall under SSDI. Mm-hmm. SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. SSDI stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. Okay? So you really need to understand the different programs that you're being assessed under and your benefits are being given to you under. So if you apply for, let's say, for example, you apply through Social Security for disability and you're deemed disabled, that's the terminology they use, you're deemed disabled, then they'll tell you, they'll give you, of course, notify you in writing, and in that correspondence, it'll tell you what your disability onset date is. That's the date that they determined is when you actually became disabled. Okay.
Gotcha.
So when you receive your benefits, then they'll tell you you're getting your benefits under SSI or you're getting your benefits under SSDI. So if your benefits are and what makes the difference is whether everybody's situation is different, obviously. And if you've paid into the system, or you can latch on to somebody like a former spouse, or maybe it's you're a child, or a child, you were a disabled child for an adult who now has passed away or become retired, then your benefits could potentially be under the SSDI. So you've got to figure out where you fall, okay, to determine how you're going to be affected. You could receive SSDI, and if your benefit amount is at or below the federal poverty level, and honestly, I don't know what that amount is off the top of my head, but it's around $1,200. Okay, let's just say. So let's say your Social Security disability amount is only $1,000. You could also turn around and say, I'd like to apply for SSI. Remember, SSI is Supplemental Security Income. It supplements your income. And SSI is there for individuals whose income is at or below the federal poverty level. They supplement the income, whether it's their only income is SSI or their current income is below the federal poverty level. Then the SSI can be approved to give you an extra second check or whichever, a supplemental check to bring you up to that level. Okay. And if you, for whatever reason, qualify for SSI, Medi-Cal automatically comes with it. There's no other thing, nothing else you need to do. It's just an automatic benefit of SSI. Okay.
Perfect.
Not SSDI though. Okay. Only SSI. But you can have SSDI and SSI is what I'm trying to say.
So that I didn't know. That last part I didn't know. I didn't know you can have both. I think that's really cool for those who may have to consider that as an option. But I do know that a lot of people will ask about the difference of SSI and then having to apply for Medi-Cal. And so knowing that, hopefully that can help some people today learn that they can that Medi-Cal will follow once SSI is approved for that individual, right?
Yes.
So Lisa,
when someone's on SSI, they get Medi-Cal automatically.
Perfect.
So and their Medi-Cal is administered through Social Security.
Right.
Whenever they have questions, they need help, they go to Social Security. The only time they would go to the actual state social services office, the Medi-Cal office, is if they needed maybe a new Medi-Cal card. That would be the only reason you would go to the Medi-Cal office.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Well, if anybody in the comments today, one, thank you all for watching, by the way. Thank you everybody for liking the video and sharing it. We can already see some people saying hello. So thank you all for being here and sharing the video and tagging friends and support groups. It's also really, really helpful. We'll go ahead and just kind of jump into maybe some of the big stuff that I think Miss Lisa here wanted to cover. So Lisa, you said that you have some notes in regards to some of the proposed changes. So knowing that a lot of the people who watch our videos every week typically are families who have special needs in their home, or again, disabled loved ones who do in fact have Medi-Cal and programs like IHSS, right? So do you want to maybe go down the line of some things that you feel would be really important for the people watching today to kind of know what's, maybe coming or what they can expect? And if things do get approved, what should they do? Do you have some things you want to start with?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. So like I said a moment ago, there are 3 different types of Medi-Cal, okay? And I just kind of briefly went over the SSI Medi-Cal program. Now, the one thing I do want to add before we go on is that if you do qualify for the SSI and you get the Medi-Cal, then those rules, like I mentioned, never changed. Those rules are the old rules that the other types of Medi-Cal used to be applied under. We're talking $2,000 worth of assets, $3,000 for a couple. There's very strict income limits. This is a federal program, so they're very strict guidelines. Okay, they always have been. They've never changed. That's the way it is. I don't think there's any proposed changes on the SSI Medi-Cal program as a whole. So these 3 different types of Medi-Cal is how you'll be assessed to qualify for Medi-Cal. And as you guys know, Caleb and Dakota, you have to have Medi-Cal first before you can get IHSS. So you've got to step into the realm of getting on Medi-Cal and getting those benefits in place. And that's what I'm talking about now. So the other 2 types of Medi-Cal are through the state social services office, the Medi-Cal office. And those are called Magi Medi-Cal and non-Magi. And they're looked at completely different. They both have different rules. And so I'll go over to give you an idea. And it's important for you to know, like I said earlier, which Medi-Cal program you're being assessed under, because those are the rules you're going to have to abide by. Now, one thing I do want to say before we move along is that something in regards to we're talking about eligibility. Some of these eligibility, like we're talking about Magi and non-Magi. Magi Medi-Cal has no share of cost. That's how the program works. You either qualify or you don't. If you qualify, you're eligible to Medi-Cal with a 0 share cost. Okay. Magi Medi-Cal has no asset limits. It never did. and they're not proposing to change that. Okay, it's all income based. Now, non-Magi, which is also known as traditional Medi-Cal, has been around since 1965. And some of those rules, limits, were still in place up until, what was it, July 1st? July 1st, 2022. July 1st, 2022 was when Medi-Cal first changed the rules with the assets and saying that was phase 1 of the asset elimination test. So July 1st, 2022 is when they changed that 2,000 amount to 130,000. Okay. And then January 1st, 2024, they eliminated it. It was a 2-phase process. That was under non-Magi traditional Medi-Cal. Okay. Now, eligibility is not the same as share of cost. Okay. You've got to realize that if you become eligible to Medi-Cal and you have a share of cost, you're eligible to Medi-Cal. You just have a share of cost. Some people feel that for whatever reason that I was approved for Medi-Cal, but I have a share of cost. So they kind of interpret that for whatever reason, thinking they don't have Medi-Cal. I'm not sure why, but the fact is you just have a portion you need to pay every month before Medi-Cal will step in and help out. So if you have a share of cost, one of the things we can do here at Medi-Cal Consulting Services is we can assess your current share cost to see if it was evaluated properly, see if it's correct. Medi-Cal tends to make errors quite often, unfortunately. We won't go into that. But Taylor, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, one point to that actually with the share of costs. So that is a very, very common thing that's brought up a lot, especially on the IHSS discussion. So a lot of people who are wanting to pursue IHSS, they get discouraged from applying to Medi-Cal because the clerk that they speak with, or whenever they're going through the process, they'll say, oh my gosh, you're going to have a really high share of costs. It's not even worth applying. So I think that's where that stigma comes from. Or at least on our end, what we see, because we work with so many families who are trying to get IHSS. And in some ways, some ways your share of costs could be more than what would be paying for the IHSS, right? But at the end of the day, like,
think that actually, Caleb, you may think, oh, well, this is Medi-Cal is not going to be any help for me because I have a $1,200 share of cost. But then if you look at the IHS hours you get and how much money is going to be earned through the IHSS, let's say you end up getting protective supervision. I mean, what's the reimbursement rate on somebody getting protective supervision? It's around $5,000 a month, I believe. You know, if I'm calculating that correctly. So if you're going to get 5,000, well, the first 1,200, the recipient needs to pay. So that's something you've got to work out. So you still got money coming in, but you've got to deal with that share of cost. Now, what I do want to say is, unfortunately, the Medi-Cal office gives incorrect answers far too often. One of the things that I hear over and over and over again is they say you make too much money. Just know that under non-Magi Medi-Cal, which is traditional Medi-Cal, you cannot make too much money. Okay, you never could, and it's still that way. And from what I'm seeing, it's not going to change. So there's not any income limits when it comes to non-Magi traditional based Medi-Cal. Okay, so if you're 65 years of age or older or on Medicare at any age, you can be assessed under non-Magi and you can become eligible. You may call Medi-Cal and you tell them, oh, I receive $2,200 worth of Social Security every month. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people tell me, oh, they told me I make too much money. It's not true at all.
Yeah.
And then it ends up discouraging someone to even going and applying, because that's what the Medi-Cal office told me. By gosh, it must be true. So
that's exactly what I'm saying on our IHSSN, and what, the misinformation the discouragement that a lot of people get, unfortunately. And so thank God we have you, Ms. Lisa, and Medi-Cal Consulting Services, which just a quick plug for you, Lisa, for those of you who are needing advice or help with your Medi-Cal, or you're wanting to pursue it, whether that be for your, again, child with special needs, or an elderly family member, you can always visit Lisa's website, medihelper.com. You can also go to her YouTube channel, where she gives a lot of great information. And so if you want to reach out to her or just peruse some of the information, that the content she shares, please do so. I know that we find it to be very, very helpful with a lot of the Medi-Cal questions that we have. And so please do that if you can.
Well, while we have a moment, I think we could. I think there are a few clarifying questions in the comments that we can get to while we have a little break. Trisha asked, "Is the share of cost monthly? Let's say $1,200, like you said."
It's a monthly obligation, and in any month that you want to use Medi-Cal, you're obligated to pay it. But if you don't use Medi-Cal in a month, and you don't need Medi-Cal to cover any cost or expenses for whatever reason, then you don't have to pay the share cost. Okay. I tell people it's kind of like car insurance. It's like your deductible. It's there for when you get in an accident. When you need to use it, you need to pay it.
Makes sense.
Trisha also asked this a bit earlier. What about for those who have the waiver from Regional Center? And I think the question here is, which program does a waiver recipient go to? Is it Magi or non-Magi?
Well, I mean, it would depend. I mean, the waiver program, you guys are more experts in the waiver. You're talking about the income waiver, correct?
The institutional deeming waiver, where the child's income is considered separately from their parents, I believe.
Yeah, strictly for minors.
Right. So we're talking about typically minors. So typically minors are under Magi Medi-Cal. And if you're
is that also known as considered like full scope? You know that term, full scope Medi-Cal? Would that be Magi?
Yes. Full scope Medi-Cal. All that means is you have Medi-Cal with a zero share of cost. That's what that means. So if you have Medi-Cal with a share of cost, then you don't have full scope. Okay. So if you're non-Magi Medi-Cal, traditional Medi-Cal is for people who are aged, blind, or disabled. Okay. So if you're deemed disabled and you have to be deemed disabled by Social Security. And it's important to get that disability determination assessed for your child. But you're not receiving Medicare. Or you could be receiving Medicare, but I'm talking about individuals who have been deemed disabled, but they're not yet receiving Medicare. They're first assessed under Magi. Okay, that's the first hierarchy of eligibility they talk about. So you first get assessed under Magi. Magi is solely according to income. That's it. It's a pass or fail test. If your income over the limit, you don't qualify. Okay. So first, someone is under, with this institutional deeming waiver, if they're assessed under that and they are deemed disabled, but they're not receiving Medicare, they're first assessed under Magi. And if their income is over that limit, then they get assessed under non-Magi, where there are no income limits. So they could potentially have a share cost or maybe not. It depends. There's multitude of programs that you can be assessed under that we can, help you understand.
Okay. We'll go through a couple more of these real quickly. You don't have to give long, just, if you know the answer. Patricia asked, when does the PICL amendment come into play?
So the PICL program, which is actually aid code 16, is for individuals who were receiving services under SSI, and now, for a variety of reasons, they no longer are eligible to SSI. And so through the PICL program, what they do, you're now referred over to the Social Services Medi-Cal office. You were getting your services through Social Security. The SSI is through Social Security, remember. So you were getting your benefits through Social Security. Now you're no longer eligible through SSI. So then Social Security refers you over to Medi-Cal, the Social Services office. They automatically have to continue your benefits to give you the proper amount of time to be reassessed now under their either Magi or non-Magi program, depending on your situation.
Got
And
it.
and that's all that pickle is. It's something that came out to protect individuals who were getting kicked off SSI, so they didn't lose their benefits, their Medi-Cal benefits. They lost their money, but let's keep the Medi-Cal in place. And that was specifically to help people keep their Medi-Cal. And that was why that came about.
Okay. I think we'll do one more just for right now. Janet asked, can I apply for Section 8 housing with IHS and SSI income? I don't know if this is actually a question for you, but
yeah, no, there's like so many different programs into that question. I think the best thing, Janet, would be for you to talk to somebody who's with Section 8 to find out how they do their eligibility. So,
all right. We don't have the answers for you today, but thank you for the question still.
All right. Thank you, Dakota, for taking a quick peek at those comments. And please keep commenting. We will do our best to go back and forth as best we can. There was one question here that I think more of a curious question, your personal opinion, Ms. Lisa. So with these asset changes where we're kind of going backwards from the progress in a sense, what seems to be something realistic? If we're going to improve the benefit of Medi-Cal, if we're going to improve this and make it better for the families who do rightfully deserve it, I think, a part of the big cuts is narrowing down which families actually are going to need it, and to the state of California who actually, quote unquote, deserves it, right? So for it to go down to the poverty level again, a lot of people fear that that's not a fair bridge between where it was for these last couple of years and where it's going back to. So realistically, for it to meet maybe a good percentage of Californians who do rightfully deserve it and need it so that they can get programs like IHSS and things like that, is there like a realistic idea of maybe some changes in the future where instead of the asset limit being 130 plus thousand or 2,000, could it ever be met in the middle? Could it ever be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 for a family? Is that even like remotely realistic?
Well, before we even dive into that $1 million question, let's reiterate something. First of all, if you're on SSI Medi-Cal, nothing's changing. That's the understanding. Okay. If you're on Magi Medi-Cal, it doesn't appear anything's changing with Magi Medi-Cal. So the only really major changes we're talking about apply to those individuals who are being assessed under non-Magi. Okay.
Nope.
Non-Magi is where they have asset limits. SSI always had a $2,000 asset limit. It never changed. Staying the same. Magi has no asset limits, and they're not proposing to change that. It's all based on income. Okay. So with non-Magi Medi-Cal, traditional Medi-Cal, which is for the age blind and disabled, that's where there are no income limits. They just have income thresholds to determine share of cost. That's important to understand, because that's where people get misguided because they get misinformation. So with non-Magi, that's where the asset limits really lie. That's where it was 2,000 back in 2022. And the thing is that what they're proposing and going back to 2000, I mean, that those limits were put in place. Some of these limits they're talking about were put in place back in 1980. Some go back to 1965. It's
Were those numbers the same back then too?
Some of them, yeah.
So no adjustments for inflation and the way that the world has been going.
Yeah. But they're workable numbers. We've developed techniques, processes, and methods using the Medi-Cal regulations to assist families to get around, or not get around, but to comply to the $2,000 asset limit and become eligible to Medi-Cal. So it is shocking that we're going to put a $2,000 limit in today's environment, but it's not overcomable. We have a way to do that. It's a lot of work, but it can be done. It's not a deterrent. It shouldn't be a deterrent. It's just an adjustment from a wide open system to a more controlled system with a limit in it. And that's the way we're looking at it now. Believe it or not, we have started working on processes and methods to educate people on what we do and how we do it so we can help them get on Medi-Cal if they do institute the $2,000 limit. So it's not a full stop. It's we can get there. It just takes a lot more time and effort to get there. That's what it's about.
So you're saying there's a chance? No. So everybody, that is really positive. That's a great mind. That's a really helpful to know. I think.
do want to promote positively, not falsely, but truly, it is positive. I mean, like I said, I've been helping people with Medi-Cal for over 30 years, and prior to them changing any asset limits to 130 or whatever, and before I even knew that was going to come about, I would tell people I could basically qualify anybody. Because it's about understanding the rules, how to navigate around the rules. When they say the limit is $2,000, what they're actually saying is $2,000 of countable resources. So it's so important to understand what's countable and what's not. Medi-Cal assesses assets in 3 ways. It's either exempt, non-exempt, or unavailable. So it's the assets that are countable that need to be at 2,000 or below. Okay. Now, one of the changes that I hear that they're proposing is the limit the value of the principal residence. In the past, your principal residence was considered exempt, period. It didn't matter what the value was. And your principal residence was basically wherever you lived. If you lived in an apartment, let's say, and you own the apartment complex, whether it was a duplex, triplex, or a 20-unit apartment complex, whatever, if that was your place of residence and you owned it, it was considered exempt. If you lived in a, $5 million mansion, $50 million mansion in Beverly Hills, it was exempt. So now, due to the Deficit Reduction Act, actually, that came out in, I think, 2005, California never really adopted all of those mandates. And in that Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, one of the proposed federal mandates was to cap the value on the principal residence. Now, federally, they were talking about, back then, capping it at $500,000, $500,000. Most houses generally outside of California are not really worth usually $500,000 or more. Okay. Now, the other thing too, a little caveat to that, there's so many caveats. That's why I really want to urge our listeners today. If you hear something that you feel is devastating, please, please, please don't take it to heart until you actually get the details. Okay. Because let me tell you something. There are so many ways to deal with this.
Sounds like it.
There are, and you have to understand how Medi-Cal rules work, okay? And I was taught and trained by Medi-Cal. I administer these rules on a regular basis to my clients who are coming in to apply. So let's talk about the principal residence for one, okay?
And real quick, Lisa, sorry. You can keep going. Don't mind me. I'm going to shut off my camera for just a moment. I'll be right back. I'm listening, but go ahead and start with that point. That'd be great.
So in regards to the principal residence, okay, typically in the past, it was exempt, didn't matter the value. Well, now they're proposing to put a limit on the principal residence. With the Deficit Reduction Act, it was $500,000, $500,000. But now with these new rules here for the state of California, what they're proposing is $1 million, okay? Now let's talk about, because there's quite a few houses out there nowadays with the way that the housing prices have just escalated and crazy. And so if you feel, oh my gosh, my house is worth more than $1 million. I know it is, maybe it's, whatever. Anyways, they take the property tax assessed value. Okay, that's the value on your property tax statement. So pull up your property tax statement and look at the assessed value. And that's the value that's used. And even then, you get to subtract any encumbrances. Okay, that's what you owe on the house. So if you take the assessed value from the property tax statement and then you subtract whatever's owed, you're most likely going to be less than $1 million. Okay, and if you're not, you're over $1 million. Let's talk. Let's figure this out. But don't get devastated. Don't feel like the world's coming to an end. There are so many ways to work around these rules legitimately that are allowed. I've been doing this for over 3 decades. Okay, we can help.
I ask you a question about that? Like, if you're someone who let's say your house, your primary residence is just barely over that amount in a system like that, you're just a little bit over the amount. Is that a situation where you'd just be completely not able to get Medi-Cal, or is that where the share of cost comes in?
No, share of cost only deals with income.
Okay. So if you're above the asset limit, you're just
about assets.
Yeah.
So
in a situation like that, you would not be able to get Medi-Cal unless you could somehow lower that.
No, you could still get Medi-Cal. It would be something we would need to deal with, address, and help you figure this out.
Right,
we
but
can help
not in the current state, not with the way your house would be at that time, right?
I'm not following you, Dakota.
If the cap is $1 million and your house is valued at $1.5 million, until that changes, you wouldn't be able to get Medi-Cal. Is that right?
Not necessarily. There's things you can do to still qualify. There's no cutthroat here that this is it, you're done.
All right.
There are always options, believe me.
Mm-hmm. We have a few more questions I think we should jump into. But there was one personal question from me, because I know we had talked about one thing that I had gotten wrong at the previous live about what does or does not count for assets, and I thought you might want to clarify that for our viewers.
Yeah, so depending on what your situation is, you have to declare your assets on your application, and every asset is assessed differently. There's no one, everything's counted, the value is this and that. I mean, there's always a caveat.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulations that remedy some of these issues that you can apply to the example you were using. You can just lower that cost or the value of the asset itself by doing certain steps. Like I said, it's a long process, but it can be obtainable. Over the years that we've been doing this, we've really never encountered a way not to make it happen. It's just making the sausage is very intense, right? But the end product is the end product. So you just have to be patient. It's a very cumbersome program with a lot of rules and regulations. If you know how to navigate that, your success factor grows exponentially.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's so much more than you can explain to us, just during the live stream.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God. I tell you, I used to do an 8-hour class on it's just very involved. And honestly, I don't want people to misinterpret anything, but for one, and then you say one comment and people read into that. Oh, that's what I need to do. Let me go do that. And then maybe it didn't even apply to them,
Mm-hmm. All right. I think I know Caleb has to go pretty soon, so we're probably running low on time. So I'm going to try and get through some of these questions quickly with you while we have you. Barb asked, what is, quote, impoverished spouse Medi-Cal? And then she adds some context, but is that a common term, impoverished spouse Medi-Cal?
It's actually this, which Barb, it's called the spousal impoverishment provisions. And that's only applied to non-magi. So non-magi are for individuals who are aged, that means 65 or older, or if you're disabled by Social Security, then you're assessed under non-magi. Non-magi has spousal impoverishment provisions. And that's where when you have one spouse who has become ill and needs care, they can allocate assets and income to their well spouse so that they can become eligible to receive benefits. Now, prior to them eliminating asset limits, we used to work with the spousal impoverishment provisions all the time. You know, Medi-Cal came out with the HCBS waiver program, and that's where the spousal impoverishment provisions can be applied for individuals in the community. Because prior to 2017, when that HCBS waiver became available to use in that circumstance, and I have actually a video on my YouTube channel that talks about this. If you go to YouTube and put in Medi-Cal Consulting Services, you'll find our channel. Subscribe to the channel. You'll be alerted when new videos are uploaded, and we're working on some now. But so the HCBS waiver program allows you to use those spousal impoverishment provisions in the community, because prior to that, they were only applied when the ill spouse was institutionalized in a nursing home. And then as soon as that ill spouse, institutionalized spouse, left and came home, then they were reassessed under the $3,000 limit. But then lo and behold, in 2017, the HCBS waivers rulings came out and allowed them to continue to use that, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. Now, there are things called the IMNA, the MMMNA, also known as, Medi-Cal loves acronyms, also known as the Minimum Monthly Maintenance Needs Allowance. Now, this year for 2026, it's $3,948, I believe is the number. So that is the IMNA number. That number is used for income. Okay, that's the amount that's used for income. So the spouse that's ill can allocate income to the spouse, the well spouse, to bring their income up to that. And then anything left over, then that part is used in the calculation of the share cost, which at that point they can have over $1,800 on addition to that. So take $1,348 and add $1,800. Mm-hmm. That's quite a bit of income a couple could have and not have to worry about a share cost. Now, also with the spousal impoverishment provisions, which are only applied to married couples, they have those asset rulings. They have something called the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, the CSRA, the CSRA. Those are all one and the same. So under the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, and honestly, because we haven't looked at assets in over a year and a half, I don't know what the CSRA is. I don't even know if they published one because there's no asset limits. So the last Community Spouse Resource Allowance was maybe close to 140,000, 150,000. So that means when you're 60, if you're assessed under non-magi, you and your husband, you and your spouse, you and your wife, whoever, your assets can actually be, quite a bit. It's not the 2,000 or the 3,000. And that applies under the HCBS waiver. So if you're a married couple, please don't start giving off your assets to your kids thinking that's what you need to do. Let's talk. Let's evaluate your situation, and let's help you understand what in reality you're allowed to do. Now, what I want to recommend for people, if you're not on Medi-Cal now and you've been thinking about it, you've just been putting it off, now's the time to apply before these rules change. Because once the rules change, they're going to be applied immediately from what they're saying to the new applications. For those individuals who are on Medi-Cal, what the chatter is they're going to be reevaluated at their next annual redetermination. So in a sense, there might be some grandfathering in to some aspect. So that's good to take advantage of why it's there. One of the rules under the spousal impoverishment provisions is that once you're approved for Medi-Cal, the well spouse can have unlimited assets. That's always been the rule. Now, whether they change that or not, it's hard to say what they're going to do, honestly, but that was part of the rules back before they started messing with the asset limits. That's just how the spousal impoverishment provisions worked.
Okay. It's going to be really interesting to see how some of these changes do come into play, and whether that be this year or again in the following years. I think there's always room for improvement here, right?
Yeah.
With that said, we still do have a good chunk of people. Dakota, do you mind if I sneak off a little early? I got to go do school pickup. Do you want to hang out for a few more minutes, cover a few more questions, and roll the end?
If you need to go, you can go, and then we can wrap up with a few more of these comments, because I know there's a lot of people that want to hear this information. So
perfect. All right, thanks guys. Lisa, thank you so much for joining today. I'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Sounds
See you,
great.
Caleb.
Take care.
All right, so let's let me jump back into these. Carrie asked for the asset. I'm not sure what the first part is, but they did ask, what if you have a trust irrevocable? How does that work? Do you know what that is?
Well, trust in general are all very different, whether it's a revocable or an irrevocable. And most people don't really even understand what their trust does for them, to be honest with you. You need to really, look to see if you have a certificate of trust. A certificate of trust is what really is usually like a one-page document, but for the most part, and it goes and it just is kind of a description of what the trust is. But also just calling the attorney who did the trust for you. One thing I want to really help people or recommend that, if you're trying to do legal documents, whether it's a power of attorney, a trust, things like that, I don't recommend you pick them up at an office supply store or you even download them off the internet. You really need to work with a legal professional, even non-legal professionals. Sometimes the trusts that are provided through those type of services may not be worth the paper they're written on because the language is not appropriate. It doesn't have the particular language that you need, and then when you go to use it, it doesn't do you any good. If you get an estate plan, which is the power of attorneys, the trust, the will, all of those things that come with an estate plan. One thing I recommend is, take the power of attorneys, the financial power of attorneys, and take it to a financial institution and give them a copy and say, hey, this is my power of attorney for my husband, my mom, whoever. They'll send it to their legal department. And then, sometime later they'll come back and they'll say, okay, we've accepted it, or sorry, we can't accept this document. Then you'll know that it wasn't written properly.
Okay, thank you. Celeste had a question. I think this is related to Magi Medi-Cal, since I believe you said that's the one that takes income into account. Magi
is based solely on income.
Solely on income. Okay. So since I currently have Medi-Cal and I'm a caregiver for my adult son, does my non-taxable income get counted towards Medi-Cal IHSS income?
So since it's an adult son, yes, it does. It's only minor children. If you are the parent, a live-in provider of your minor children or your spouse, that's the only time that your IHS income is not taxable.
Okay, so the IHS income for the provider affects their Medi-Cal eligibility. So you're saying?
It's not the provider is the one receiving the income. Correct. So that's who you have to look at. So if the provider is, first of all, you have to be a live-in. So you have to be living there. IHS income for Magi is excluded from income calculations if the caregiver lives in the same home as the IHSS recipient and the caregiver provides services under the IHS program. So that's under the Magi, okay?
Sorry, you said under that circumstance, then the provider's income does or doesn't count against their Medi-Cal?
Let me say it again.
Okay.
For Magi-based Medi-Cal, which serves most low-income individuals and families, IHS income is excluded. It's not counted from income calculations if the caregiver lives in the same home as the IHSS recipient and the caregiver provides services under the IHS program. Now, this exclusion that I'm speaking of is based on the IRS notice 2014-7. So if you want to look that up, okay? Mm-hmm. It states that payments to caregivers providing care to a qualified individual under a state Medicaid home and community-based services waiver program are excluded from gross income. Okay?
Okay.
For non-Magi Medi-Cal programs, IHSS income is exempt when the caregiver provides IHS services to their spouse or minor child and lives in the same house as the recipient.
Now, you said for non-Magi Medi-Cal.
Correct.
And that's the one that doesn't take income into account, right? The traditional Medi-Cal does not take income into account?
Only to determine share of cost.
Only to determine share of cost. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Let me see. But yeah, we've got a few minutes. Shirls said, my father-in-law is 73 on Medicare, SSI, disabled, veteran, and on Medi-Cal. I mean, I think your answer will probably be you don't know. You'll have to know the specifics. But she asked, does he have a share of cost?
Well, it tells me in her verbiage, she's saying he's on SSI. So SSI Medi-Cal comes automatically with zero share of cost. But the thing is a lot of people get confused what SSI is. They call their Social Security income because that's what they think SSI is, Social Security income. That's not SSI. SSI is supplemental security income. It supplements your income to bring you up to the federal poverty level. So if she told me how much his income is, then I would know if it was truly SSI or not. And that's basically the SSI limit is about $1,200.
Yeah, she actually did follow up and said he makes $2,254 monthly. I don't know if that is.
So is that $2,254 just his Social Security? If that's the case, then he's on non-Magi traditional Medi-Cal. Besides the fact that he's 73, so he's over 65. That's non-Magi.
Okay. And then, so here's another question. Christina asked, because you mentioned there's always options to work around the asset limit. And if the worker says there isn't, and you don't qualify, what is your next step? Do you contact a supervisor? If for some reason if they do take your Medi-Cal away, can we appeal and keep Medi-Cal to figure out in the process so we don't lose IHSS?
You can always appeal anything. You have the right to appeal anything. So don't let anybody ever tell you different. But it's not the Medi-Cal's eligibilities worker's job to help you qualify. It's not their job to tell you what those little caveats are. I mean, their eligibility works. They're just there to determine eligibility, yes or no, not to help you get qualified. That's what people like me are for. So,
but the administrative hearing process is a good way to hold everybody accountable
Absolutely.
in processing the claimant's application. So supervisors can be just as misinforming as the Medi-Cal worker itself.
Absolutely.
When you
Yeah.
go to a hearing, it's all based on factual information and what regulations apply to the misappropriation of processing the application. So the administrative hearing, what we found in our experiences, is a good way to hold all parties accountable and making sure that the application is processed correctly. And that's what the judge does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you go to them and you say, "Oh, I says I'm only allowed 2,000 and I have 20," well, all their job is to look at the facts and make a determination. And they've done their job. They've said you're not eligible. You're over the limit. They've done their job. They're not required.
They're not going to help you figure out how to.
No,
how to
and matter of fact, some are told not to help. You know, so they're not there to help you qualify. They're just there to determine if you're eligible or not.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like, let's say you get audited by the IRS. Okay. They come to you and they're like, "We're auditing you this year." You're like, "Oh, great. So bring in all your receipts and all your documents and come on down and let's go over it."
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when you walk in there, they're going to say, "Oh, well, did you know about this tax loophole and this tax cut here? And oh yeah, you could save billions. Nobody told you this?" No, the IRS doesn't do that.
My best advice to Christina is this: even though they said no, it may not be no. And the only way you can do that is through the administrative hearing process.
Well, you got to get the facts.
Right.
And so you need to get the facts from someone like Medi-Cal Consulting Services who can tell you really, truly what your options are.
Okay.
All right, we've got, I think, just 2 more questions to get through, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll try to make them real quick. Karina asked, "My son has Medi-Cal through CalWorks. We no longer qualify due to increased income of IHSS as of recently. He also receives SSI. Will the SSI Medi-Cal automatically kick in once he loses the Medi-Cal he currently has? Or like, what's the process for switching over?"
So the way that when someone is on like social services Medi-Cal, which is, you know, like Magi Medi-Cal, and then they become eligible to SSI, it's usually the other way around, but you know, there's supposed to be some, you know, in place to protect you, so you don't lose your benefits.
Well, I'm wondering, so
what's happening is social services is dropping you, and Social Security is going to pick you up. And
does the recipient have to initiate that transfer, or is it all going to happen behind the scenes?
No, you need to contact Social Security and tell them, "I want to apply." But they're supposed to give you additional time to do that, so you don't lose your benefits. There's no break in aid.
But it is on them to then contact Social Security and say, "I'm losing my Medi-Cal through this program. I need to get on it through Social Security."
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And just so everyone knows, the number to Social Security, 1-800-772-1213.
Okay. 1-800-772-1213. Is that right?
That's for Social Security. Now, Karina, this question you have, you're saying my son had Medi-Cal through CalWorks. So that tells me he had Medi-Cal through Magi. We no longer qualify because of the increased income of IHSS. Now, when we were talking about Magi Medi-Cal, if you live in the same home with your son under the IHS program, then it didn't seem like that IHSS income would count. So I'm a little confused about what happened with you.
Yeah, that's what you were saying, that for Magi recipients, they wouldn't count the IHSS income, right?
Right. Because under non-Magi is when they have to be a minor child. But under Magi Medi-Cal, it doesn't say that. It just says, you know, the carer lives in the same house as the IHS recipient. The caregiver provides the services under the program. And based under that, the income wouldn't be counted. So I'm wondering if she was assessed correctly. So that's the thing. Medi-Cal makes mistakes. So does Social Security. They make mistakes. So you can't take it to heart as soon as you get one kind of decision. Always, ask more.
Yeah, and that's why they should contact you.
Well,
All right, we got one more question for you, and then I'll get to the last few things that people are saying, and we'll wrap it up because we got to leave time for the Spanish Live right after this. Bernice said, and I saw that this was on your video on your website, so maybe we just want to direct people there.
Oh, you watched the video, Dakota, I recommended?
It was the video you recommended, yeah. And she asked, what happens after you pass away? Is it true Medi-Cal will put a lien on your property to collect any monies owed for using Medi-Cal? And I remember I saw something, I don't remember what it said, but you had a little statement that you have no, and it was something starting with a P, then you have no lien.
So what you're referring to there, Bernice, is called estate recovery. So what happens is when someone's on Medi-Cal and they pass away, Medi-Cal has a right to come and place a claim on their estate upon their passing. But to avoid a lien, you just need to avoid probate. So no probate, no lien.
That's it. That's the statement. No probate, no lien. All right.
There you go. So just avoid.
And again, this is something.
Avoiding probate could mean a number of things. I hear often people say, "Oh, just get a trust." No, that's not the one-all answer to it all. Everybody's situation is different, and you may or may not need a trust. So don't run out and get a trust just because that's what you think you need. Get legal advice. I mean, you can reach out to us, and if we can't answer for you, we can get you to somebody who can. There's a lot of great resources out there. And having done this over 30 years, I've got a ton of them.
All right. Now, I'm going to handle these last couple questions myself because I happen to know the answer. One is about this video. Will this be posted to watch later? I missed the first part. Tanya, yes, it will be posted to our Facebook, but it only stays on Facebook for 30 days. If you want to watch it after that, you want to go to our YouTube channel. And Teresa just stepped out, so she can't post the link to our YouTube channel, but you'll find it. But yeah, it will be posted. Janet asks, Lisa, what is your title? Do we have to seek you out, or does Medi-Cal help get in touch with someone like you? I'm quite certain that Medi-Cal will not send people your way. I'm guessing
actually, Dakota, I do get referrals from the Medi-Cal office.
Do you?
I do. I get quite a few people who will say, my Medi-Cal worker gave me your number. She told me not to say anything. Or
little secret referrals. That's interesting.
But yeah, we get quite a few referrals from the Medi-Cal office. I mean, they realize we know what we are doing.
Yeah.
And
now, for anyone who doesn't have a great social worker like that, let me just give you guys Lisa's information here. You can find her website, her phone number, and all of that. And I'm sure all your contact information is on your website, right?
Yeah.
And we've set up an email address, Dakota, info at medihelper.com. So if anybody has questions that didn't get answered today, they can email us at info@medihelper.com to get questions answered for their situation, their particular circumstance.
All right. And the last question we have is directly from Teresa, where she said, we're hoping Lisa can join us for our seminar in San Bernardino. Is that possible? Might we see you in San Bernardino?
It's on my calendar. I plan to be there.
Excellent. Then we're looking forward to it. So just for anyone who doesn't know, who showed up late, we're having our Galt Advocacy Seminar. We're going to talk all things special needs in San Bernardino at the Doubletree in San Bernardino this coming Sunday. And we're also going to be at the Regional Center Resource Fair
next Saturday and Sunday.
On Saturday. Yeah, well, yeah, the 8th. The 7th, I believe, is the Resource Fair, and the 8th is the seminar. It's not tomorrow. But yes, so next week, that's what we're going to be. And it sounds like, Lisa, you're going to be making an appearance, at least.
I'm joining you guys. Thank you for the invitation, Dakota.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being here. We need to head off so that Nicole has a chance to come on and do her Spanish Live. I believe you're going to be joining her for that as well, or someone from your organization.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope the information that we provided today was helpful to you. And one thing I didn't get to say that I did want to share is that there are no actual changes being proposed to recipients. Okay, the only proposed changes in the May revision in regards to recipients is the cutback on gender affirming care services. That's it.
Okay. And if I know we didn't really get a chance to get into like the Medi-Cal for undocumented and immigration statuses, but I'm sure in the Spanish Live that'll probably be a topic of discussion. So if anyone wanted to hear about that, we'll stay tuned. It'll be on our Spanish Facebook page. So thank you again for being here, and for everyone watching, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled lives next Friday at 12 o'clock. So thank you, and bye-bye.